Welcome to MyLife, Chassidus Applied, episode 59, where you can send in your questions and all your comments at meaningfullife.com/MyLife. This episode is dedicated in loving memory of Dr. Donald Adler, Don ben Nachum, whose yahrzeit is on the 18th of Adar. If you'd like to dedicate a future episode of MyLife, Chassidus Applied, please go to meaningfullife.com/MyLife/dedicate. For those of you intrigued about what's going on with the contest, the judges are in process of judging all the papers. As I said, over 500 papers came in, essays, and Mitzvah Hashem, we hope to be able to announce it at the end of Adar, as we promised, Chav Zayin Adar. Hopefully by then, due to the number, I can't say absolutely, so I say bli neder. Now let's go right into some topics, new topics, as well as continuing some topics that have been discussed before. And that is, we always begin, as been the custom, with Chassidus Applied to the Parsha. This week, we read both two Parshas in the Torah. It will be both Parshas Vayakhel-Pekudei and Parshas Parah. This Shabbos, I had the opportunity this past Shabbos to verbringen with a bunch of Bochrim in Los Angeles. Purim Dike Hemshech verbringen. And we talked about my life, and it was very interesting and intriguing. Some of the Bochrim mentioned to me that they listen avidly to the Sunday broadcasts, My Life, and they're surprised that they don't find, when they learn a Maimer, how do you find the emotional intelligence, the psychological application that I always emphasize in these week's episodes. So I said to them that hopefully I'll try to do something this week, and maybe this can become a custom on an ongoing basis to actually take a Maimer and learn it, a few lines at least, and apply it in that type of fashion. But like everything, when you're learning Chassidus, there's a critical axioms. Before you even begin, you need some Hagdomas. The Hagdomas consists of understanding the approach. For example, when you learn Gemara or Shulchan Aruch, then you do not need to have necessarily a personal application in the sense of your psychological life. There, the point is to know what to do and what not to do. That's the whole purpose of learning halacha and so on. When it comes to Chassidus, the whole point of Chassidus is personal application, Avedis Hashem, to serve God better, which includes both Ben Adam L'Chavere and Ben Adam L'Mokim, because serving God also includes how we behave with each other. It's also part of Torah. As the second Perek in Mishnah, Pirkei Avos begins, Ezer derech sheyovel min Adam, Rebbe Eimer, Ezer derech, what's the way that a person should choose for himself? Tiferes la'Adam, Tiferes la'Yisrael. That it's not just about Ben Adam L'Mokim, how we behave with God, but how we behave with each other. So right away, the axiom, the Muskal Rishon, the initial axiom has to be that it's about personal application. A second thing we must know is that the Rabbeim, starting from the Baal Shem Tov, and obviously going through the Magid, the Malta Rebbe, all the way to the Rebbe, they taught Chassidus in order to give us tools to grow, to actualize, and to fulfill our purpose in this world, and to serve God. It says the Baal Shem Tov gives how every person could serve, and the Alter Rebbe showed the Baal Shem Tov showed that every person could serve, and the Alter Rebbe showed how each person can serve Hashem. So immediately you have to understand that they're applying themselves. Like Reyed Seina, Reya Nemon, is Metech Aves Yisrael, Moshe Oyev Yisrael Hoya. Every Rebbe, Moshe Rabbeinu Shebeder, the first axiom, the first basis is that he's doing this out of deep love, instead of sitting and learning his own Torah and Avedis Hashem, which could be reach far greater heights than applying himself to his flock. He applies himself to teach Chassidus. The whole point of Chassidus is saturated with the love of the teacher, of the Rebbe, to the Chassid, to the individual that's learning it, to anyone that ends up learning it. And therefore, it doesn't have to say in every line, I love you, or this is all written out of love. It's a basic principle. A third thing we must know, the Eibishter could have created the world without any Seder Shtalshus. And thus the whole Chassidus and Kabbalah would not exist. Because we wouldn't have the learning of Yediyah Seder Shtalshus. Like the Alter Rebbe says, it's a mitzvah Rama Nozgova Ma'oid in Kuntas Achron. The knowledge of how God created the universe. He revealed that to us. But not just He revealed it to us, why did He do it? The Eibishter is called Yochel and doesn't need to create anything in any type of order. It could have been done in a completely different way, or in a way they didn't tell us how He did it. Because the whole Seder Shtalshus was done as Se'elam Nosim B'libam in order to give it to us in our hearts, that we, Bepsari Yahrzeit, from our flesh, from our beings, from our personality, we should be able to comprehend, relate to the divine. What more loving thing is that? In Perek Mem Tes in Tanya, the Alter Rebbe speaks about the Tzimtzum. So he says, just like the Eibishter, what did He do? In order to create existence like us, out of His deep love, Tzimtzum Shchinta, he basically concealed Himself in order, put Himself on a side, Kavyachol, in order for us to be able to exist. We too have to put ourselves aside. It's an unbelievable lesson. Because usually you hear about Tzimtzum, you hear Tzimtzum is in order for there to be a universe, there cannot be the divine presence. So first of all, that itself is a logic that God put into existence. It could have been done in different ways, and wouldn't necessarily have to be the logic as we understand it. But more importantly, the mere fact He did that shows that profound love. And Kamayim upon Him, we have to show the same thing by putting aside our interests, so to speak, and dedicate ourselves to the Eibishter. So all this emphasizes, even before you begin to learn even the first Maimer Chassidus, even the first word of Tanya, that it's all about us personally. Number two, saturated with love and care, and about Allah teaching us how to become greater people. Greater people as in greater fulfilling our purpose, fulfilling and actualizing the keiches and the mission that we were given, realizing it in this world, and doing our part in fulfilling the purpose of existence. When you know that, then every word you read, you don't just read it as an element like one of the Lamites Malachas. Okay, we have to know what Malach it is. Even that also should be learned with Av and love and understanding. But Chassidus is a direct blueprint of how we can grow. So therefore, when you learn a Maimer, you have to keep thinking every line, instead of just thinking, what does it mean, Seder Shtalshus? Remember, that whole Seder Shtalshus was created for us. The Eibishter didn't need it. He needed it to create a system of stepping stones for us to be able to reconnect. How could we do it in a structured system, which is what the Eibishter wanted? Why He wanted a structured system, we do not know. But that's what He wanted, a structured system the way it is right now. The Alter Rebbe says that, and the Tzemach Tzedek brings it, I've cited it a number of times, is in order for us, in the logical existence and rational existence of structure that God created, we should be able to climb that ladder and achieve that element of connection. So with that being said, let me apply that to, let's take Parsha Parah. I can't do it with everything, we don't have the time, but I'd like to take a Maimer, the Maimer Parsha Parah. It's a Likutei Torah Chukas. I've quoted this a number of times in the concept of the Koyach HaMesaveh, but let's learn it inside. But learn it Al-Daited the Nafshe in the sense, thinking that these words are written for you. Imagine there's no one else around. The Alter Rebbe called you into his room, and he's going to learn with you something. He's telling you this is important for you to know. So as soon as you take it out of the herd mentality, the group mentality, think of it as a personal message. You have a question in your life, here's an answer. Tanya, for sure, which we'll talk about in a moment. But every Maimer. So here's just, I'm going to read a few lines. As I said, promise the Bochum, and I hope it's good for everyone. Let's take a learn a Maimer and learn it with that type of attitude, with this mindset that I just spelled out. So I'm reading in Likutei Torah Chukas, which is, as I said, Parsha Parah, we read Zeis Chukas HaTorah this Shabbos, this coming Shabbos. So this is Likutei Torah Chukas. The Maimer starts Vaydaber Avai Zeis Chukas HaTorah. There's a few Maimorim Zeis Chukas. What I'm reading right now is on the bottom of page, it's a Perek Beis in that Maimer. It's the bottom of Nun Vov, Daf Nun Vov, Eira Torah Chukas. Sorry, Likutei Torah Chukas. Nun Vov, Seif Omid Gimel, and the top of Omid Daled. So what does he say? Let's just read. So I'm just going to go, without reading the whole thing, I'll just give a summary, and then I'll read a few key lines. So he speaks about the way you retire from Tumas Mess, right? How do we purify from the horrible impurification, toxic forces of death? So the Eibishter gives Moshe Zeis Chukas HaTorah, and he points to Parah Aduma. What's the essence of the Parah Aduma? You take a red heifer, you offer it, and you mix the ashes from burning it. You burn it down. The ashes you mix with the Mayim Chaim El Keli, and that is what you throw it on the person who's impure, and that's metayed him. The Alter Rebbe explains the dynamics of these two elements of Mayim Chaim, but what I'm focusing on, Efer HaPorah. So the Porah, what you're really burning down is the basic elements, as he says. The Dal Yahrzeit, everything is made up of elements. So there's two key things that make the Porah a Porah. Well, number one is the chaylev, its fat, which signifies its pleasure, the pleasure in our lives. And the second is the dam, the tichas adam, which signifies the passion in our lives. So passion and pleasure. That you have to burn down, but you don't annihilate it, you don't destroy it, because what remains is Efer HaPorah. The ash remains. So something remains. So the Alter Rebbe explained, what is this moshel in the physical world, the breakdown of the elements, but you still remain with Efer? What is the key element here? And you read it and take it personally. Think of your passion, think of your pleasures, and how they can bring death into our lives. Spiritual death, spiritual numbness, disconnection. And here's the solution of how we repair that. So the Alter Rebbe speaks firstly, gives the mashal, of course. He says, for example, when you burn wood, so the mere fact, think of that Alter Rebbe is giving us a mashal to make it palatable and us, to each one of us. You burn wood, he says, and through that the wood becomes Efer, dust, or Efer actually, ash, not offer, Efer. The Efer is the core that remains. When you burn it down, you get rid of all the so-called the tzura, the shape and form. It gets to the raw element. What's left? Ash. Because everything comes from offer. Ash is connected to offer, to the dirt of the earth, to earth. Only within it was also mixed, blended, three other elements: fire, ruach, wind, and water. Ela efer shu asmusei v'ayidei asreifer be'esh ozay gimel yoseides eish mayim ruach shoye be'etz cholfu v'kolu ba'oshan. The three elements, they are converted and transformed into gas, and they turn into, when they go into in the oshan, in the fire, in the smoke of the fire. Hamesavim harkavosam. Yosei dadal shoye be'esh zeu asmusei. What remains? The fourth element. Shehu ha'efer ha'ofer shabai. Okay, I'm going to skip a few lines, and now he goes to Avedis Hashem. The behemoth is now within each of us. Now, let's stop right here for a moment. It's your nefesh habamis he's talking about. He's not talking about some hypothetical animal soul. He's not talking about something for tzaddikim or beinim. He's talking about every one of us, a nefesh habamis. Everyone, I think, knows needs nefesh habamis. You don't need me to explain what your nefesh habamis is like. Everyone has an animal soul. She says the nefesh habamis nishtalshel gamke mipnei sheir ma'asmeil. Every animal soul has to come from somewhere. Where does it come from? So it comes from Pnei Sher. In the Merkava, there's the Pnei Sher, Pnei Nesher, Pnei Aryeh, Pnei Adam. Pnei Sher, from the Shmuel, from Gvura, from the left side. Kamoi b'chinas Porah de Kabilas mismala. Okay. Okay, again, I'll just read this quickly. Just like from the Porah, afterwards comes a Yishpol l'chatzenim. Kach min hamidas, the nefesh habamis. So now he's talking again back to us, the midas of nefesh habamis. Your midas, nefesh habamis. Say my midas of nefesh habamis. Nimshach hacheshek v'atayve, the desire and the pleasure. The tainuge elam hazeh beheter ebi isar chaz v'shalom. So whether it's something permitted, that's a desire, or isar, God forbid, that's where it comes from. The midas of the nefesh habamis, the animal soul rooted in the Pnei Sheh, but now down below, V'hine k'sha'odam cheshek v'chefetz l'dover minyan elam hazagashmi ne'eseh dover ukeli la'rotzen v'atshuka shebeleva odam. When a person desires something from this world, so that then becomes the keli for his desire and his yearning in his heart. And he looks for all kinds of ways. Again, I'm skipping a few lines. I'm just going straight to the points I want to make. And he contemplates and thinks how he's going to satisfy his desire. Like a tzura l'chemer. So now what you have is, you have here a desire, but then the desire looks for ways to fulfill the desire. And that's the tzura, that's the form and shape of how that animal soul is going to satisfy itself. Okay. So now, just like we learned before, there's what Dali said, this is an etzem and there's the tzura. The efer will be what's left over once you burn it down. But now it's manifest in a whole shape and form. She says, even though the core desire, once it dresses up and clothes itself in a particular negative behavior, and find an example in your own life to apply this. Nevertheless, the personality, the essence, the core faculty is not a chet, not a sin, and it's not evil on its own. Because the core element, all it is the power to desire. The power to desire something doesn't have any negative element to it. It doesn't say what you desire. It could be the power to desire elokus. The Alter Rebbe had a very deep shukah and taiva for malchus. The story with Yutas Kislev goes. It could be, technically, it could be a power to desire something good. Just like now he desires something negative, now he could desire something good. Now translates in simple English. Now the Alter Rebbe is standing with you. You're telling him I have a nefesh habamis that it desires this and that and that. Alter Rebbe says, I understand. These are negative things, but let's split the two. Let's dissect what's going on here. What you desire, the object of your desire, that's ra. But the koyach hamesava, the same desire could be something good. Then he goes and listen to these words. You talk about the care of a teacher, of a mashpia, of a rebbe. What happened was the ra has dragged and in a sense inclined and drawn the koyach hamesava liyas mesava l'ra v'nasa bo yatsura ra ma'oid. So now the actual object of the desire, whatever it may be, that's a negative thing, has drawn this power that on its own is just a potential power that could be also good into ra ma'oid v'nislabish b'levushim tzoyim and manifests in clothes in soiled garments. To the extent, God forbid, that he can turn toward away from mitzvah, positive mitzvahs, or to desire something prohibited. But the koyach hamesava on its own, he has the ability to transform it from one extreme to the other. Liyas misave ve'eyev v'chefetz l'dofke b'Hashem. To desire and to love and want to cleave to God. Ki be'emes, and here's the strong words, even stronger words. Ki be'emes, because in truth, this power to desire that the animal soul has on its own, its root and its foundation is in holiness. Kedusha al yena, hot and higher, mepchinas pnei sheshe mekover kanal. Says to say dosei in the highest level in kedusha, ela shabiridus hamadreges v'nifilosim b'shviras hakelim nimshach shiyah keich hamisav gam l'dvar avera. Okay, so what's the solution? The solution is to burn it. Yes, you have to break it down. You can't just say, oh, well, it's rooted in a great place and let me just ignore the negative. No, you have to burn. And this is basically the process of tshuva. You should eliminate the tzura of where that negative expression and just get to the core of the element. Now here's a piece that you can learn. You can learn it theoretically, you can learn it abstractly, or you can learn it in a caring way of a teacher, a rebbe, applying himself to a situation like ours. He's not ignoring, saying, here's what you're involved in, but here's the solution. You have to burn out, and that requires bittul, a matter of tshuva and so on, that she continues on the Maimah, which I'm not going to go through right now. Just wanted to give you a taste of you can learn this in the most caring and loving way if you speak in that type of language. And you realize this was written, not stam to write, not stam an inyan, a nice idea, a nice analysis. It's written in order to help us resolve this. I'm not suggesting that it's easy to do, but you have a formula. The Alter Rebbe spent time to apply himself to give us this formula. So this is a lesson from Parah that each of us can take, and it's every negative thing in our lives this applies to. Whatever taiva you may have, whatever it may be, in any type of behavior that needs repair, this applies. Okay, I hope this was helpful, and I'll try to do a similar exercise in each of the different episodes, the coming episodes, and trying to actually take my modim and show. Well, obviously, take my modim. This one is a little more practical because he's talking about the nefesh habamis. Then there's my modim that talk about seemingly abstract ideas, lifnei atzimtzum and eirei sof and kav and esesfiris. Where do you see their emotional application? I want to add one more thing. In Sefer HaSichos, Tovshin Daled, in Sikha V'yem Beis, the Chag HaPesach, Friedrich Rebbe speaks. So he tells the story that says like this. The Alter Rebbe wrote Tanya in different times over a period of years. The year Tovkuf Nun Vav, it came into writing, the Tanya. In Tovkuf Nun Zayin, it came out in print. In Tovkuf Nun Ches, year after year, a group of Chassidim came to the Alter Rebbe and Gimon Bahoid, and they demanded something from the Alter Rebbe. They said, "As they verstehen it in Tanya." They don't understand Tanya. It's Chassidim of the Alter Rebbe. As they verstehen it in Tanya. Ich habe nicht verstanden, erzählt. The Tzemach Tzedek, when he told the story, he says, "I didn't understand exactly what's going on." He was then, he says here, 8-9 years old. What did Alter Rebbe answer them? A halbe Zach nennt man nicht. Half a thing you can't really get. Bichdei zu verstehen Tanya darf man haben Negine. In order to understand Tanya, you need Negine, song. He continues on that Tzemach Tzedek writes how much charoti he had regret because Tzemach Tzedek had a natural musical skill, musical talent, and he worked hard to get rid of it. But when he heard this, he realized the importance. These are very strong words. You don't really hear them so often. You can't understand Tanya, even the Chassidim of the Alter Rebbe, without Negina. What does that tell you? A song everybody relates to. A song nobody needs, Chassidus Applied, to teach you how a song touches you. Why are Nigunim so vital in Chassidus? Nigunim Chassidish Nigunim. They sing a Nigun before the Maimorim and the special Nigunim for different times. And Bechal, Nigina had a whole Pashma B'fnei Atzma. Because Nigina tells you that Chassidus is all about that emotional connection that song does to you. When you learn a Maimon, it should sound like a song. It should sound like a personal song that touches you just like a Nigun does. And when you have Nigina, it's not pshat that Nigina is going to suddenly answer a question in Tanya, but it'll make the Tanya personal. It'll make it emotional. It'll apply it in that particular way. So that requires its own project. It would be a Gevaldika project. How do you learn Tanya with Nigina based on these words of the Alter Rebbe? But I just wanted to show you that you can take the same chassidus that we all learned in yeshiva, for good or for bad, how they taught it to us. I'm not going to go into all the negative, but regardless, and we don't have to be hostages and feel trapped by what was the way it was taught to us. Remember, learning it is like singing a song, like touched by a song. And that's how we have to learn that's how we have to learn how to learn Tanya, how to apply Tanya. And obviously it goes to all of Chassidus. Turning it into a nigun. And then the nigun itself helps you take the ideas and apply it. You could say, what does a nigun have to do with Avona and Perek Mem Aleph and Tanya about Kabbalah Seil? Or in Merchal Talev and Perek Beis? Or the power of Eved Elikim and Perek Tazvov or Avis Yisrael? Well, Klara de Burim, Chassidim didn't understand. I'm sure they understood the Havana of Tanya. What they didn't understand maybe was the Likutei Eitzes, the Eitzah, how it applies. to really get to the bottom of it. And that's where the Nagina comes in. So I'll attempt to do more of this, and each week, this is of course the whole yesod and foundation of Chassidus Applied, MyLife Chassidus Applied, to apply Chassidus in this fashion. So with that, there have been a number of questions that we're following up. We were talking about the painful topic of violation of intimacy, especially with children. So talk now the positive side of it. The best cure is preemptive medicine. Magdim refuah lamaka, where you have the healing before the illness, which is the way that God gives it to us. So the number of questions came in of how we actually can educate our children and ourselves, but especially our children who are beginning from fresh, clean slate in a healthy attitude to intimacy. So just read a few questions and then we'll take it from there. Dear Rabbi Jacobson, thank you for filling a void. I write as someone who was abused. I'm not going to go through all the details here, and I want to highlight a few points. Sexuality is very much part of everybody's life. We can't cut that out. As a result, to ignore it as we grow into adults is obviously ridiculous. The question is how to make sense of it, how to deal with it, and how to direct it positively. Unless this is proactively taught, explained, and coached to our youth in an open, I don't necessarily mean public and direct manner, we are going to have the problem fester. In addition, you will have teens who are not repeat offenders, but just actively acting on their urges, being turned into forces that may be destructive. Most importantly, without direction and guidance to our young adults to help them become aware of their own sexuality and to be able to evaluate if they have extreme sexual desires or wants, and explain to them this is an illness like any other and they need help, then we're going to see, if we don't address it that way, we will allow the problem to grow. The need to guide our youth in the above and give them the tools to place and places to deal with this is of paramount importance. Okay. More details, but that's essentially one person writes. Many of our leaders, he continues, I should say at the end, simply because of the discomfort or because of their own inability and immaturity, are not able to relate to it, and therefore they just avoid it. My bottom line I want to say is do not be embarrassed. God created us with this force, and we have to address it in a positive way. And if some things negative happen, we have to know how to not be ashamed and know how to deal with it. That's his rights. Question number 2. What's the best way to explain to children that the same place where they relieve themselves is the most holiest place of their body? And question number 3. I was wondering if you could address raising intimately healthy children. What kinds of messages should a child be getting verbally and non-verbally to ensure that she grows up sexually healthy and pure? What are the ingredients to raising an intimately healthy child? Do you think it is healthy to send children to a men's mikveh? Should a child growing up see his parents be physically affectionate? If so, to what degree? I'm not sure anymore being absolutely tznius and private about is the healthy way to go. A child that sees zero physical affection between parents and goes on to see what seems to be it in the streets and online has no healthy model to refer back to. This is the questioner asking. How should we prepare our sons and daughters for puberty and all it entails? Can you share words of wisdom from the Torah and Chassidus and how to speak to and prepare our children? Vayakhel bitcha aktana. Okay. There are more details in this question, which I don't want to read because of some of its explicit nature. But you can imagine yourself that many of the issues that many of us just refuse to talk about is being addressed. And I'll try to address it in the best way I can. And I think sometimes in these things, megala tefach, mechasat v'chaim is the best way to speak, but with certain more innuendos and in a tzniusdik and discreet and modest way. Okay, let me see. That's that. Okay, so let me begin firstly with a letter from the Rebbe that I've read in the past, or at least I cited in the past. This is a letter, Yud Beis Adar Tovshin Chaf Aleph, and it's printed in Igris Kodesh Chelik Chaf, volume 20, page 175. It's also printed in Likutei Sichos, volume 22, page 404. It's to a Dr. Monk, who's a well-known educator, and he writes to the Rebbe. The Rebbe is responding to his question about explaining to Tzi'irim v'Tzi'iris, which is young men and women, Begil habagrus, as they develop into adults, in the adolescence, about the topic and the problems associated with the Yetzer and connected to intimacy. So the Rebbe writes the following. I think it's important to be medayik. This is a very uncommon topic. You don't find a lot from the Rebbe on it. When I wrote in Torah Meaningful Life the chapter on intimacy, I struggled to find material from the Rebbe, but there are material, and that chapter actually captures as much as I was able to uncover. But this letter is one of those places. So the Rebbe writes, Kosher likfeya amoda mesuyemis. It's hard to establish. I'll just translate it. I won't read the Hebrew. You could all look it up yourself. It's difficult to establish a particular position and perspective on this topic, because even though the Maimer Azal says that you cited in your letter, he's writing to Dr. Monk, that when there is a concern or anxiety in the heart, in the parentheses of the children, of young people, they should speak to others. Yasichena has also the word heschadas, which the Rebbe alludes to here slightly, but Yasichena that you should speak to others. And the writer of this letter to the Rebbe is suggesting that you should speak about it. So even though there's a Maimer Chazal, the Rebbe says, in this particular department, in this area, Chazal have told us that Ever Kotten Yeshle Ba'adam, there's a small organ in the body that when you deprive it, it gets satisfied, and when you feed it, it gets hungrier. So the Rebbe says, part of making it more by satisfying is by talking about it. So in other words, the Rebbe is in a sense negating the discussion on this topic, seemingly. But then he continues, Prat, except if the discussion is led by a mumcha, by an expert, who's really excellent at avoiding certain type of expressions and associations. In other words, someone who does it discreetly and in a pure and healthy way. And as I've seen in several places, the Rebbe continues, that in particular situations with confrontation with the teachers, in a place they established a style, a behavior, how to speak to a particular student, or both male or female, and not more than combining two or three together. Obviously, in a way where the boys are separate from the girls, and it should be done in a very discreet way. And even then, Sarich and Gadol, even then you have to have a very careful discretion, to be careful not to be machshil and not to incite, and in any way cause this discussion alone should cause an incitement to bring to any type of negative thoughts and so on. So what you see from this, the sensitivity necessary here. The Rebbe is not saying not to discuss it, and I'm not getting now into our moises, you could say he was writing to him and his situation, but you could see that from this you can get some lessons, and I'd like to derive some of the lessons. Number one is that there's an importance to be able to address it, at least one-on-one, and maybe even very small groups. critical is that it cannot be done in any way that can lead to incitement. As he said, by talking about it itself can create people to start thinking about it more than necessary. To completely avoid it, it doesn't look like the Rebbe holds you should completely avoid it. So I would say the following. In a Chassidic home, the best examples are not by talking always, it's by living. Healthy intimacy is far deeper than just sexuality. It's an attitude to life that's sacred. That you're sacred, your life is sacred, your body is sacred. This is something that can be taught to children without using any type of allusions or anything that is language that could be somewhat misinterpreted or misunderstood. It doesn't have to be sensational. It's an attitude. Sanctity is how you eat a meal as well. Sanctity is how you walk, how you get dressed, how you take a shower. And obviously around the area of sexuality. So to understand that a person is created with Tzelem Elokim, in the divine image, and to speak about your children with that, about that with your children, from the youngest of age, is a very healthy thing to do. And it doesn't have to have any sexual meaning at all, especially in the earlier years. Then when a child has that type of attitude, their life is sacred. Sacred means that God gave you and blessed you with a body. Your body is a vehicle for your soul to express itself in this world. Every part of your body is sacred. You know, the Rebbe brings from Chassidus brings from Sifsei and Altera, Sheftim v'Sheitim Titl Lecha B'chol Sha'arecha, that you should appoint, designate judges and law enforcers at all your Sha'arecha, all your gates. These are the 7 gates: the 2 ears, the 2 eyes, the nostrils, the 2 nostrils, and your mouth. The gates. So every part of your body has to be sacred. What you take in, what you look at, what you don't look at. So obviously the parts of a person's human body which is connected to the power to give birth, the power to perpetuate and build families, is ultra sacred because of that power of Koyach Ein Sof. Teaching this to children from the youngest of age is absolutely, in my opinion, necessary today, more than ever before. Because this creates an attitude. Now, parents themselves behave that way. Children see them behave that way. That, of course, reinforces it. It's not just words. They see you also behave that way. How you eat, how you talk to each other, father and mother. Whether affection should be shown, nowhere does it say that affection cannot be shown, father and mother. It does an intimacy, an intimate way, perhaps, is definitely not. But a normal affection, where people talk nicely to each other, kindly. I would just not confuse children, and probably best is to keep certain things have to be kept private, but not because there's something to be ashamed of, because it's simply intimacy by its nature is a private experience. It's a personal experience, an internal experience. And you teach your children that one day when they will marry, they will find their spouse, they will have their private, intimate time. That's what intimacy is. Just like on Yom Kippur, you're intimate with God in the sense where you and God alone. I know Vayakhel-Pekudei. There's a concept of a certain privacy. Privacy as in the sense of intimacy, as opposed to raw sexuality. This attitude, obviously, someone that's healthy, has a healthy attitude to intimacy, that will project to your children. If you yourself do not have one, or if you're aware of it, then you should definitely do something about it and go talk to someone that does have, so you can, at least for your children's sake, know how to express it properly. The problem is that many of us are ourselves have issues with our intimate selves, and we don't acknowledge it. So you can bet that your children are going to pick that up. So it has a lot to do with how serious you take your responsibility as a parent in this regard. And yes, the investment of the years of doing this in a positive way is the best preemptive medicine against negative. Children that have this type of attitude are less likely to get involved in troublesome behavior, less likely to be prone to be poached upon. I'm not saying it's guaranteed, but they can then be also have a certain element of pride, an element of ownership over their own bodies. And when the day comes when they are ready to speak about sexual things, of age, of puberty, and so on, you can then just continue that type of message as it was taught from younger age, which is, okay, now that you're aware of your own behavior, your own growth, your own maturity, your hormones begin to rage, let's talk about that. And I think if it's done in that way, without the shame, without the guilt, without all the stigmas, in almost a nonchalant way, as the Rebbe says, not in a way of, we're going to talk now about something racy or sensational or something that we have, in a very nonchalant way, just like everything is sacred in life. This is a sacred part. How we talk will be a big effect of how on our children. And I think the more I think about it, though obviously one size does not fit all, clearly you have to understand your children. Today's day and age, it's probably healthier to speak to your children, and not in the negative way, warning them and frightening them, but all positive. That this is an area that needs to be particularly holy, kadeshim, and protected to the day when you have the sanctity of marriage to be able to fully actualize it. Now, people make mistakes, people fall through, we all know that. But like anything in life, you don't dwell on the negative, you dwell on, okay, we fell, now you learn from that and you try not to again. Now, I'm not going to get now, we've already discussed the topic, people who are already in a situation where they become addicted or they can't control their temptations. I'm talking about preempting as much as possible and bringing up healthy children, healthy attitudes. Okay. That will suffice for now. Let's move to the next topic. Next topic is racism and prejudice in the community. Is there a racism problem within the community? Are Jews of color mistreated? How do we come? As Jews and as Chassidim, what's the best way to treat others as Hashem's creations rather than pigeonholing them to the color of their skin or to their particular culture? I understand there has been tension within the black community in Crown Heights, and there have been incidents to validate certain feelings to a certain degree. I've been told these people are better victims rather than ignorant racists. Not sure. Are bitter victims rather than ignorant racists. I can even understand older Yidden that use the term Schwarze because they grew up speaking Yiddish. The word literally translated into English means black and nothing else. But most of the younger generation do not speak Yiddish as a first language, and the word Schwarze is used as an inflammatory remark about someone whose skin color is black. This does not seem like the proper way a Jew should speak or think, especially when we believe that people were created b'tselem Elokim, the divine image. There are Chassidim who are black because they have a black father, converted, their parents converted, etc. It also does not line up with the Rebbe's call to teach Sheva Mitzvot Bnei Noach to everyone regardless of skin color. So my question is, what can we do to stop this absurdity? How can we teach our children to be more thoughtful and not say certain words because they heard them from classmates or at one of their homes? Question 2. It is known that Jews can come from anywhere in the world. We are diverse people. Nevertheless, within our community, I see rampant racism. When a Jew of color walks into a room, people tend to stare, gawk, and question their authenticity. Why are we not educating our children in acceptance of Jews of all backgrounds? For example, I myself am a Jew of color. My skin is black. When I sometimes substitute, teach, children will refer to me as a Schwarze. How is that acceptable? What can we do within our community to change that? Okay, similar questions. Well, some of you may be familiar with a famous story that happened in France. It's a long story, but it came down to, bottom line is that there was an individual family whose daughter got engaged and was going to marry a non-Jewish man, a black man. And what bothered the family more was that he was black than non-Jewish, and ultimately he converted. It's a long story. I don't remember all the details, and it's not for now anyway. The bottom line, that the expression that the Rebbe used is that a neshama does not have a color. Soul does not have a color. It's an interesting expression. So once a neshama is a Jewish neshama, whether it's a ger or people who grew up in different parts of the world, whether it's Yemenites or others that have dark skin, a neshama has no color. That's a basic principle. And just like Perek Lev and Tanya talks b'chlal about every Jew, this obviously applies. And I want to distinguish because these questions somewhat mixed together, Jews and non-Jews. So let's first talk about Jews. So absolutely there's no room for discrimination and racism, even for a ger. How many times does it say in the Torah about Avos HaGer? Because you yourself were a ger. You yourself were a stranger. So the sensitivity to someone that joins the community, ger tzedek, pi halacha, or someone born for whatever reason with a different color skin, or in any different type of culture, it's basically, let's call a spade a spade. It's simple, petty racism, yes, and discrimination. It has nothing to do with Yiddishkeit. Even when that Ameir said to the individual in the Gemara, he said, Kama muchur, look how ugly you are, how unbecoming. And he said, Leich lu'umen shasani. Interesting. Why would the Gemara document such a story? An Ameir is walking in the street, he sees somebody who's ugly, and he says to him, you're ugly, which itself is quite shocking. So he answers him and teaches him a lesson of his life. Lech le'uman, go to the uman, to the maker, to the crafter who shaped me, who created me. Because the Torah wants to teach us a lesson, that even a person can come to that, al tabet al mareu, and look at the externals. Our role as Eden is to always look at the neshama. Yes, of course we all have tendency when you see something doesn't fit in, it stands out. But this goes back to what I said about intimacy. It's parents project to children. Parents who are critical, who are dismissive, who are condescending. What do you think? Your children are going to become that way. Because they think it's all right. So it all begins at home in our attitudes, including our school. The word schwarze, yes, has become a derogatory word. The truth is that there was once a time where blacks were called Negroes. Then they were called colored. And now they like to be called black. So schwarze was always black. But it's true, if it's said in a way it's a derogatory term, it's not appropriate. You never heard the Rebbe speak this language. And you saw the Rebbe's behavior to all people. Now I go even to non-Jews. So the Jews, is for sure, it's not even a question. What difference does it make? And God forbid a person who may have a handicap or has, for some reason, a broken nose or has some other defect. So we're going to laugh at the person. It's unacceptable. It's despicable, actually. So I don't know if you need Chassidus applied for this, but it's especially at Chassidus. It's not the behavior and becoming to a Jew, b'chlal, chassid b'frat, specifically, to speak or think of that way about other people. The love, the care, especially for someone who may stand out, has to be double and triple. And this is what we have to teach our children. Unfortunately, I remember when we went to yeshiva and there was a kid that stuttered or a kid that limped or other things. Kids made fun. It's not appropriate. Teachers should not allow such a thing. It's unacceptable. Especially a Chassidic person should make fun of another person. You destroy a person's life when you make litzonah. Besides the challenge they have now, they also feel inferior, they feel dismissed, they feel like pariahs. God forbid. So we have to eradicate it, period. No stronger words that I can use for that. As far as non-Jews, God created the entire world. And there too, there's no room for condescension. Our job is to massacre the world, not to criticize it, not to dismiss it, not to mock it. That people stoop to petty things. Hey, yes, there are a lot of petty things, but let's call pettiness pettiness. Let's not justify it, not in the name of Torah, not in the name of Chassidus. So there's no room for laughing at or dismissing any tzelem elikim, even a non-Jew. Chovev adam shenivra b'tzelem. I hope that makes the point clear. I don't know if I need to elaborate more. And the way we eradicate it is by us paying attention to it. You see it, you see someone behave that way, in a nice way, you tell them something. Teachers, schools, parents. There has to be zero tolerance of this, of behavior like this. People make a mistake and they sometimes say something, okay, so you correct them the proper way, like proper discipline. But a person, a Jew, a chassid, has to be seen as a living example. What you say from your mouth, how you speak to people. Kindness, generosity of spirit, especially when someone has a particular challenge, to be even more compassionate, not patronizing, more compassionate. But what did the Rebbe Rashab say to the Frierdiker Rebbe? Nu zeh, was war Rachmanis in das Afashete, was the Teire sagt, afem Talmish kein Rachmanis haben. Because it says, Shete osel rachamolov. You're not allowed to have compassion to a fool. So says the Rebbe Rashab, look how much compassion we have to have, that the Torah says no compassion. This is what how chassid should behave in every given situation. Okay, let's move to the next. What can we do about the Agunah problem? Okay. So let me read a question and then we will address that. Hi, Rabbi Jacobson. Thank you for being there to answer the pressing questions of the community. I've been made aware recently of a problem being severely swept under the rug in our community. It seems the rug is no longer large enough to hide the Agunas and their painful situations held hostage by get-refuser husbands who abuse their power over their wives, who want to break free from living an abusive marriage situation. Is it fair that women who need to break free of an abusive husband are held hostage in this way? That Agunas need to live the life of single mothers with all its hardships, yet they are chained until the husbands decide they have had enough of a power trip? There's a new movement in our community and women are demanding new options. Is the prenuptial agreement an option for our community? I've always heard it isn't, but it seems like there's nothing else that works. That if there is nothing else that works, it will become standard. Okay. Please help clarify this issue and discuss options for women, because this issue is only getting bigger and will result in a massive chil Hashem if nothing is done to unchain our Agunah sisters. Make no mistake about it, the media will be called to publicize plights of Agunahs that aren't being solved by Bezdin. We don't need this embarrassment in our community. Thank you. Okay, so in the spirit of not shying away from some of these more difficult topics, I chose to read this, of course. Yes, it is a problem. I've dealt with it a number of times. So let's begin with a few key points. Number one, it's purely a Chassidus Applied discussion. It's really a halacha question that is an issue in all Jewish communities, unfortunately. But nevertheless, Chassidus does shed light on this topic. First of all, the Etzeminyan, the Ramban says in Parah Kadeshim, it says Kadeshim to you. So he asked the question, we have throughout the Torah, it says, Gadashtem v'yisim Kadeshim. So many places that it says you shall sanctify your life. Why do we have a particular mitzvah Kadeshim to you? And the Ramban, this is in the 10th century, the Ramban, 11th century, says that it comes to Bavarin, comes to qualify, to address a particular type of person, called a novel b'reshus HaTorah. A novel, menuvel, is the word. The novel b'reshus HaTorah is a despicable lowlife, a despicable person who does it b'reshus HaTorah. Since the Torah does give the prerogative to a man to give a get, for example, and other scenarios that where this is possible, so to take advantage of that and abuse it for whatever reason, financial, pride, vengeance, which is unfortunately a big part of this whole of these type of situations, is a horrible thing. Now, we'll soon get to the halachas of it and what we can do about it. But I first want to address why this is horrible, because it's besides the novel b'reshus HaTorah, meaning taking your selfish needs and using Torah in finding that type of that you can now abuse it, is a chil Hashem of the highest order, as written here. It's a desecration of God, because you're using Torah, and you're using Torah to beat up your spouse for whatever reason. Now, the reasons the Torah discusses how a get is given and who initiates it, and a man has to give it, and yes, it can be a get, but usa can be forced, etc., etc. But the Torah is speaking le b'shuftanaskin, and not to despicable people. It's talking to normal, healthy people, and there are good reasons for it. So the first thing is we must, in every possible way, just call a novel a manuvel, and call a spade, and not be ashamed to say so, and publicize it, and not allow people like that to find refuge anywhere. Because people like that are run from place to place, and they try to find people who are either naive or unaware, try to find their home there. Unfortunately, we live in a world where people can run from one bezdin to another, from one rav to another, from one shul to another, and make up their own stories. So there's no question, I think, in this regard, it would be very wise where communities would finally get together, and at least certain issues like this, where you can destroy people's lives and children's lives, because it's not just the woman that remains bound, the children suffer and so on, is to create some type of shared common knowledge that we don't just give in to anyone who comes. If someone comes to a bezdin, that bezdin must check what happened in the previous bezdin. Is this person known, and what has he done with, why is he not given a get, and so on and so forth. To use a get as blackmail for money or for other things that you want to gain a power is all part of this problem. On the other hand, there have been the Rabbanim, and more modern Rabbanim and others who have called for some changes in the halachas, or some shifts in the halachas, to deal with this problem. That's equally problematic, because once you start tampering with halacha, we all know that ein l'davar sof. So that's not a Torah Chassidish way to go. But to be quiet and just say, hey, we can't do anything, is ridiculous. Rabbanim must speak up. This is a tremendous, no question, as you're saying, it's a potential chil Hashem, it's already a chil Hashem. I personally know women who have left Yiddishkeit altogether because of this. and all causing them to do all kinds of isurim, because they got sick and tired of this type of attitude. And we must protect people who the Torah is Torah's chesed. There's no way the Torah was given to be able to hurt somebody with the Torah. Besides the nevola of it, it's just simply unacceptable. And if anyone's a Torah leader, a Torah authority, a Torah respects Torah, we have to uphold the Torah by showing that this thing is not acceptable. And you find ways. There are plenty of ways within halacha that this can be handled. I don't want to address the prenuptial issue because, frankly, I'm not that familiar with the halachic implications, and I'd rather defer to a Rav who is familiar, whether it's acceptable in our community or not acceptable, how it should be acceptable. But that does not mean that this should be pushed under the rug. Absolutely not. I will use this platform in every way possible to be a clarion, to be a siren, to call out, to demand that we must do something about it. And if we put our heads together and we don't allow this to be pushed away, we'll be able to save Agunah. My own grandfather, who I'm a namesake after, who was one of the 10 Chassidim that the Frierdiker Rebbe called in the Chassidus Bris in Tofresh Pei Gimel in 1923, the secret covenant that they made to preserve to the last drop of blood Yiddishkeit in Russia. My grandfather was one of them. Later, after the World War II, when he came out into Europe, so one of the things he was involved in, and there's letters between him and the Rebbe about it, and the Frierdiker Rebbe as well, was Agunah. Because after World War II, this was a big, big issue. People didn't know, was they killed, not killed? It's a whole issue. But in halacha and Torah, you do everything possible to be mater Agunah. Because Agunah means someone's bound because you don't know if their husband's around. You go to Mesiras Nefesh to find every possible loophole to free an Agunah. And those are Agunahs were due to war, due to God's so-called confusion of the world and the disasters and tragedies that happened. But Agunahs today that are caused by man choices, human choices of Jews, that is unacceptable, absolutely. It should be a war. So if anyone has an issue with this and is having difficulty, please don't hesitate to contact me. I will do what I can, and I will use this platform, as I said. And I think noise works. Noise works in a respectful way because it demands that this be addressed. It does not have to be done in a way that, God forbid, compromises halacha, but an issue that exists in this world, the Torah must find a way to address it. There's no question. The Torah is a hira for everything in life, and it has to address challenges that may not have existed in purer and healthier times. So I say it without any hesitation, unequivocally, we have to go to war. Besides what I've said till now, I don't have more right now that I'd like to say. I will share more as we go along. But I just wanted to open the topic since it was asked to me, and I know issues that are going on as we speak. And all of us can either be part of the problem or part of the solution. To just look away and say it's not my issue, Islam, that's not how Jews behave. This is an issue that should affect us all because it's affecting women. And it goes back, obviously, back to unhealthy people who are using Torah just to get their ways, nothing to do with Torah, has to do with their own aggression and their own unacceptable nevolas and despicable behaviors. Okay, we have a few more minutes, so let me just address, with the time that remains, a few more topics I wanted to address. Let's see if we can even get to them. Should we discuss fiscal responsibility with our kids? Okay, let me comment on that. Maybe it's a free association, but I remember at Zettel a note from the Rebbe where someone asked the Rebbe, what's more important in Shidduchim? Is it Seichel or Midas Tevis? So the Rebbe said, Midas Tevis, and then he added on his own, maybe it was relevant to the person who asked, Val HaKesef, Chazal B'chlal Medabrim. And about money, Chazal B'chlal don't speak. Well, I would say the same thing with children. Money is a tool that we need in this world. And I don't think we have to taxify or in any way pollute the minds of our children with talking too much about money. Obviously, we have to behave prudently and responsibly. And if your children get an allowance and you teach them tzedakah, it's beautiful. But the obsession and the consumption that many people have today with dealing with their own, because they're consumed with money, they have to teach children fiscal responsibility at the youngest of age. I don't believe that's the way to go. If I recall correctly, there's probably stuff from the Rebbe about it. But the way the person asked the question is how to address finances with children. Is there a way to temper children's desires for extra toys, clothes, and material needs? Is it okay to explain that money is tight without giving children a complex? Someone writes, I find myself at times a little torn about our financial situation in relation to raising our children. Of course, Baruch Hashem, basic provisions we're able to provide for our children. However, when it comes to extras, our budget is too tight. Kin and harder with the cost of tuition and simchas, etc., it is hard to save up the extras we would love to shower upon our children. I was told that children should not be told by their parents, we can't afford XYZ, so I can't get it for you. Rather, you should try to convince them what they are asking for is not a necessity, rather than something they desire. Is it really terrible for a child to know that the money is tight and we just can't buy that extra suit or allow for 2 months of overnight camp? Rather than one. I am afraid I've been taking that approach instinctively because I was raised like that. However, I'm pretty sure it's the incorrect approach, as I highly suspect that my children are already dreaming up in their minds that when they get older, they will make so much money, so they'll have plenty of money for their children and for themselves to buy whatever they want. That's the thought I had when I was little as well. What would be a healthy balance? I appreciate your thoughtfulness and dedication to truly answering submitted questions in a caring manner, showing your desire to truly impact and help others with your wisdom. Well, briefly put, I think yes, balance is necessary. Completely, I mean, the very young children, obviously, there's no reason to address it altogether. When children begin to already see the value of money, like you buy something and so on, I've seen the healthiest homes that had no money. Their children are extremely happy because money was not an obsession, both ways. Not when you had a lot, showing off with it and showing, look how much we can do, and almost like dismissing those that have less. And not the other way around, complaining, oh, we don't have money and we don't have money, which really just creates a lot of fear in children and unnecessary negative energy. So I would say, number one is, let's get money out of the picture. Be happy, healthy parents. Give your children love, the greatest gift of all. Teach them what God wants of them. Teach them the gifts that Torah and Chassidus give us. Make them feel confident and secure. Money has nothing to do with confidence and security. Teach them that Vayakhel-Pekudei, Ezu Asher, who's the wealthy one, who's satisfied with his lot. Not in a type of qualified way. Oh, by the way, since we have no money, at least be Vayakhel-Pekudei. No. In a Chiladic way. The Mishnah is not apologetic Mishnah. It's a positive, which means an attitude that what really is valuable in life. Valuable in life is the love we give each other, the mission for which we were created, giving nachas to the Eibishter, living up to the Rebbe's expectations of us as a shliach of the Eibishter, and teaching us how to fulfill our mission in this world. That type of confidence infused in children is the most important element. In there, as a toffel, there may come an opportunity to talk a little about money, fine. But to make it a major topic is completely ridiculous. The major topic is what drives people in fulfilling the purpose of why they were here. They should have that happiness about it. And God blesses people with Hashidus. Excellent. Use it well, use it responsibly, gives a lot of tzedakah. Children even who don't have a lot should be taught to give a little tzedakah. The Rebbe gave dollars to everybody. My son, when he was a little boy, was going to dollars, and he saw in his pocket he put some coins and he was going to give it to the Rebbe. So he was told, don't do that. But when he came to the dollars, he suddenly started fiddling around his pocket and finally took out a few coins and gave it to the Rebbe. The Rebbe gave this broad smile, put it into his pocket, gave him an extra coin or extra dollar. This is how we have to inculcate our children about money. The idea of giving, the idea that when you're blessed, you share money or whatever it is that you have. It's a healthy, wholesome, and holistic attitude to life in general. So therefore the focus, something rubs me wrong in the sense where we're focusing, okay, let's address money. Money should not be such a nikkur, not in adult lives, not in children's lives. It's a tool, it's a blessing, it's a fuel to help do good things in this world. But not beyond that. And that's what we have to teach our children. And that comes, of course, responsibility. But it's all about the attitude of parents. God forbid to share with children that it's tough for us and we can't buy, because children get very scared about these things. They start thinking to themselves. I once heard children speak to each other, say, oh, we're poor, mommy and tati are very sad. It doesn't do good things for children. We should, if God forbid we're challenged financially, we should try to protect our children from that with a proper smile. having a Friday night evening with that smile is more important than how many delicacies and options you have. Remember, children need more than anything else, not gifts, not money, not videos. Simple attention, care. Tell them they're important. Tell them that God sent them to you as a gift. And He'll do everything possible to help them actualize their mission in this world. That's my comments on this. So, due to the fact that we've already come to, as often, time runs out, but hopefully I covered more or less the topics. Those that not, I'll cover in the future. And should you have any questions, please send them to meaningfullife.com/MyLife. Again, this episode 59 is dedicated in loving memory of Dr. Donald Adler, Don Ben Nachum, whose yahrzeit is the 18th of Adar. So until next Sunday, 8 to 9 p.m., our regular time, which will be episode 60, everyone should have a simcha dik, a Chodesh Adar. We're in Chodesh Adar, so Marbim B'Simcha continues, Mailam B'Kedesh, every day. Joy, the joy of the nefesh, Simchas HaNefesh, as we discussed in the last episode. The mere fact that we were sent to this earth and blessed with a vote of confidence by God Himself, that you have something that you and only you can accomplish in this world. Everyone should have a very simcha dik week, a very positive week. We should only talk about good things. And it's always an honor to share a few words with you. This has been My Life, Chassidus Applied, episode 59. Thank you.